Hi everyone, my name is Ashraf Ram, and today I am joined by Abdullah Koker, and we are the co-hosts of the podcast The Second Curve. And this podcast focuses on the second curve of learning that people often go through in their career, along with stories and experiences that shaped who they are today. And our goal is to take these stories and share them, and we want to uncover what the next big thing will be in their industry. And today, again, we're with Suresh for part four. Yeah, and how are you doing today, Suresh?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
All right. And so today we're going to be talking about mostly open weight models and how what impact they have right now and some controversies among them. So first of all, Suresh, what are your thoughts on the current disputes among them? You want to go over some of them and tell us what your opinions are?
Sure. Yeah, happy to share my opinions. So, on the topic of open source, open weight, I believe this is the future. And so, just to set like a brief explanation, open weight just means that like all of the values inside of a model that allow it to operate, those weights, that's what we call them, are public and available. So we can download it and rerun that model or set up the architecture and then use it ourselves. And then once you have the weights, you can even train and make like a different version of that model and keep it for yourself. So that's open weight. Open source is a little bit more. That's like you've shared your internal code, you've shared like the mechanism to be able to build that model. Yeah, open weight is all that's needed in my mind. But open source, I also think, is part of the future. And this is in contrast to closed source or like limited access. And this is more from like OpenAI, Anthropic, even Google, where everything is kept under the hood of one company or organization. And it's all driven by licenses, and there's a lot of restrictions in place for what you can and cannot use those models for. So yeah, that's the landscape. Personally, I think the future is open source and open weight. And when I say the future is that, I think it's inevitable. I don't think any amount of effort to stop that will amount to anything really. I think right now the whole debate around closed source is spawned by a need to protect the valuation of a few large US companies. But yeah, I mean, like in terms of just thinking about AI and artificial intelligence, the cat's out of the bag. You can train models on your own, but you don't even need to. You can go and grab open source models and then repurpose them to your needs. Yeah, open source is the way.
Yeah, and like bouncing off of that, we've found that a lot of these open weight models have also been, as we saw maybe a year or two ago when DeepSeek first released. And it blew open the market because it was, 100 to 200, I'm estimating, times cheaper than the current proprietary models. And I recently saw that Meta released their own coding agent at 18 cents per million tokens instead of Anthropic's and OpenAI's current $20 per million tokens of output. So I wanted to ask you, do you think that not only will it be open weight, but also there's going to be some form of a pricing war? I just want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. I mean, okay, like honestly, so we'll treat those as two separate
Yeah.
questions: the pricing side of it, and then like, yeah, well, let's just talk about the pricing. So the cheapest you will ever get a model is at cost, or meaning running cost. So essentially, like that is the baseline cost of being able to use the model. And then if you're now paying down the cost of having to train it, that's like a cost that sits on top of it. But if it's an open source or even just an open weight model, the only cost of running that model is the cost of the electricity and the hardware to run it. So the cost battle is absolutely real, and there's actually only a few constraints or levers that are at play, but all of them are being driven down. Right, the cost of compute is being driven down, and then the other one that is at play is just the development of smaller, more capable models or more efficient models, and that's also just happening just as a given. So both of these things are driving the cost of compute down. Absolutely. The other dynamic that's part of this is a little bit harder to piece apart, but it has to do with like intelligence, the cost of intelligence. So for example, if we just take Anthropic's models, Fable 5 or Fable has some level of higher intelligence than Opus or Sonnet. But the reality is that Fable 5 costs more to operate. So what are the cases where using Fable makes more sense to pay more per token than something smaller like Sonnet? So that's the other thing that you're going to see happen a lot is that for many use cases, if you constrain them, you actually don't need, enterprise level artificial intelligence. You just need reliable intelligence for a specific task. And that can be found with much smaller models, definitely in the open source realm. And a lot of times, like nowhere near the price point of the latest enterprise models. Yeah. So I don't know if I even answered your question, but there's a lot of things to consider, and the price is absolutely coming down. So yeah.
Yeah, and so bouncing off of that, I thought that was pretty interesting. Like, should people be using like these open weight models currently? Like, what do you think, like regarding that? Like, so what is your thought process regarding that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just like the new marketplace now for choice. At face value, I recommend people do play with or try to use open source models, open weight models. I think it's a great like endeavor just to learn how these things work. There's a website called Hugging Face. It's probably like the biggest marketplace for open source models. There's a few million models that are on there, that many of which are small enough you can just download and run on your computer. Some of them, or there are a substantial number of larger models, but that platform, Hugging Face, will let you host it or access it via their platform. So yes, use open source, start playing around with it. It's like the next frontier for AI. It's the choice aspect of it. So now you can go out and grab models that have different skill sets, trained by different people from different communities, all sorts of stuff, right? It's all out there. I definitely recommend it. Just to give you a little bit of like decision making about this though, for the I would say like the average entrepreneur or the average student, you kind of generally like you have some other goal, whether it be getting into college or learning some skill. So my actual recommendation for most people is that you stick to like a $20 per month premium AI plan, whether that be with ChatGPT or Anthropic. But if you're a little bit more on the techie side, or you're doing stuff with AI, like even if you've never coded before, if you just want to be more on like the AI heavy side, then I actually recommend you start playing around with open source, open weight models. Yeah, I can elaborate more about like why each side or why each bucket, but there is a lot of benefit to just going with the latest version from OpenAI and Anthropic.
Yeah, no, I'd actually love to hear you elaborate more on like what specific use cases or who is this meant for, and maybe in the future is it going to be meant for everybody, or are we still going to see some enterprise use?
Yeah. So okay, I think for enterprise right now, believe it or not, I think it's more meaningful to use open source and open weight. And actually, the companies have already been shifting to this. Part of the reason why is because they can get the cost down. So they just target really specific use cases and workflows where a open source or open weight model is more than sufficient. They're able to host it in their own environment, so it protects them from a lot of like the data access or privacy problems. It's all run within their own systems. Yeah, and then they're able to see like massive savings, right? Like for an enterprise that's probably trying to run like billions of tokens worth, like a change of 50% in the price is a massive difference to that buyer. So enterprises are already shifting to open source, open weight, and I think we'll see a lot more of that. Yeah. But for the average consumer, I think if you're someone that's trying to just use AI for general purpose, like it's not like you're trying to use it in like a technical way to solve one problem. You're just trying to grow your business, learn a new skill, find more time in your household. Then I recommend just one of these, like the hosted offered AI tools from Anthropic or OpenAI. The reason for that is because then, for a very good price, something like $20 a month, you get access to like the latest and greatest. You don't really have to think about, which models am I using? How is it hosted? You're not worried about that. You just get to use these very capable models for like a modest price. Yeah. Then I would say now, let's say you're an engineer or you're building like some solution or like you vibe coded an app. And this app requires like some sort of like summary note taking, something like that. You're probably using some endpoint, or you may end up using some like API from the big guys, Anthropic or OpenAI. But this would be like a first use case where I'd actually recommend you try and host a model locally and just have it run from yours, like your AI model. Yeah, and that's like a nice gateway or entry point into open source, open weight. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, so you talked about like how open weight would like it could be in the future with like enterprise and stuff like that. So how do you think we should adapt to this? Like, how would you personally like adapt to this in your like maybe in your job, or like how do you think people like that are mostly in tech should like adapt to this?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think it's already happening. Like once you get comfortable with using an AI tool like Claude or ChatGPT, you start to develop a certain set of skill sets. All of that transfers when it becomes open source or open weight. The only difference is like where this thing is hosted and like who's benefiting from it. But otherwise, most of it looks exactly the same. So what I mean by that is like, let's say I'm going to work at a company like TJX. Okay, that company today may have like subscriptions for all of their corporate employees for Claude. But what I'm saying is that in the open source or open weight world, it wouldn't actually look that much different. I would go to TJX, I'd pull up my computer, and I would just start interacting with the chatbot that looks very similar to Claude. The only difference is now it's a model it's a model that's owned or controlled by TJX, and they're hosting it in whichever way works for them. Yeah. So it's like seamless. You won't even notice the difference. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And I think that was a good kind of introduction to what open weight models are, what the difference between that and open source, and how people should start adapting to it. And what I wanted to also touch upon is the recent article that's been all over the news about this OpenAI model breaking out of its testing containment and infiltrating Hugging Face servers, and the conversations it's bringing up regarding AI cybersecurity. And I wanted to hear all your thoughts about this, where we're headed, how much you believe this. I'd just love to hear this.
Yeah. I mean, so, all right, well, first we'll talk about just the important part. I do think AI is a very capable coding tool, which makes it a very capable hacking or internet, just web harm tool. It is very capable at this. This was also what was behind Fable being held, the initial release of Fable being held back. It had to do with cybersecurity. So with that knowledge, knowing that these models can very competently go to a website, review the code, identify vulnerabilities, and then even plot a way to try and break in, right? We know that it's very capable of doing this. That's given. So now with that knowledge, I think the conversation of a model doing this by mistake or autonomously is just at face value, someone somewhere was willing to allow that to happen. Meaning, yeah, maybe they did put it in an environment and it found a way to break out, but that means they didn't try hard enough to keep it from breaking out. And I'm tempted to believe that, it's not that far off to say hey, model, find the best way for our company to win. And in the process of working through that logic, it determines it should hack into Hugging Face. So whatever, I don't know what level of involvement the humans had, but it's a failure. It's a human failure that led to this model breaking out and attacking Hugging Face. Okay. So now talking about the future of open source and what we do with this. This AI is here. It's very capable. It is a very harmful tool. It is also a very capable and beneficial tool. So my whole perspective on AI and its security threats are actually more defensive than they are I don't believe in restraining the AI. I believe in improving our systems so much that even with this capable AI, it's not a problem. So what that means is if I'm a web developer or an engineer, my goal is now not just to build an app that's easy, the AI can do it, but now it's to build an app so secure that AI systems and malactors are not able to break into my app. That's what I believe is the future.
Yeah, I like your take and opinion on it. And adding more, who would be the most impacted by that?
By just open source in general, by it being more widely used. Yeah, I mean, this is already happening in the rest of the world. Open source is being more widely used than state of the art models. Part of that is also because they're just smaller, and the rest of the world doesn't have as much access to compute as the US, Europe, and even some parts of Asia. So I mean, so here's the implication. Okay. Anyone that was hoping to make money back off of investments for training AI, they're at risk. So if there were investors or companies whose intent was to build some very competent model and their business was around some form of repayment for that investment, these are the guys that are, the most impacted by this right now. The investors that are building out hardware are not impacted to the same degree because that still has value. When open source models come, there still needs to be a place to, host and run those models. So hardware is fine. But the big investors of the software itself, namely, in my opinion, Anthropic and OpenAI, are the most exposed. But the truth is these companies are so big that they have investments into other aspects. So I don't think anyone's going to fully die. But I just do think the reason we are seeing OpenAI and Anthropic coming out, or at least not fully in alignment with open weight, is because they have something to lose here. So that's one. I think governments are also another group that's set to lose because they lose control. But I view this more in line with my first argument is I just think governments now need to become more knowledgeable about AI and control it in different ways. Yeah, so governments are impacted. And then personally, I think the small individuals are going to benefit the most from open source and open weight, because what will happen is the price of these things will be driven down, which helps, with access. It also helps with extending it to, less developed parts of the world. And then they're the ones that will benefit.
Yeah, and you've talked before on this podcast about how the individual from agentic coding or agents in general, the individual who can bootstrap something is at a has greater benefit than a slow company. And you mentioned it here as well, that the individuals benefit or will benefit the most. And I was hoping you could elaborate a bit on that, not necessarily specific to open weight, but how exactly should somebody who's an individual who has some sort of a goal or a dream, or they want to solve a problem, what are things they can do that companies can't, and how can they exploit that? How can they take advantage?
Yeah. All right. I'm going to answer that question first, and then I'll connect it to open weight. So the number one thing that the individual has that the companies will most of the time lack is motivation and purpose. So it's kind of not that much different from like people fighting a war, right? If there's two countries at war, the country that's got more purpose and motivation many times can beat a much stronger competitor just on that basic principle. And I think that's still true. And in fact, I think it's more like exaggerated with AI. The reason being is AI is intelligence that we get to manage and use. So your ability to do something with AI comes down to your willingness to manage and enable the AI. The more that you can do that in an organized way, the more that will get done. Okay. So, and that skill set that I'm describing, by the way, is no different than the skill set of a leader or a CEO pre-AI. It's that same skill set. But your motivation and purpose to do that, in my opinion, is the greatest impactor or dictator of what you will create with the AI, right? Because you have this resource, but you have to be willing to iterate with it and push it forward. So yeah, if you've got motivation and purpose, meaning if you come from lower like socioeconomic background, or if you've got certain desires or goals, those are going to be more impactful than a company with, more people working on that problem. In fact, I think this motivation and purpose thing actually becomes like all right, I'm going to try and explain this. Imagine you've got a company, one scenario, company C. It's got 10 people and they offer, dental management software. Okay. Group of 10 people, company C, dental management software. Now you've got a group of 1 or 2 people, company A offers the same thing, dental management software. So just looking at them, one has 8 more people than the other. So you want to think, oh, their output will be more or greater. The thing is, that's only true if all 10 people from company C work and decide to manage agents and decide to solve problems more than the 2-person company. But in my practice, from what I've seen, smaller groups of people make faster decisions. Smaller groups of people tend to have better accountability. Like there's only 2 of you, so if something's not getting done, like where that's coming from. And then I also just think that like if your group of 10 has a few people that are just there to earn a salary, they become like detractors. Not that they're not going to help you, but their incentive to work hard isn't the same as people that are like owners or real benefactors from the work. So yeah, this is all to say that I think small teams with motivation and purpose will run circles around large companies. And it's not just because of like output. It's because of like the reduction of all of the like inefficiencies that companies have. Yeah. So that's why I think like the small man, in my opinion, has everything to gain right now. And if you're willing to learn AI, you can literally amass an army to work for you. Okay. So you may have questions, but now how does this relate to open source? In right now, today, you could go buy like in the Mac world, you may need to buy like a $3,000 or $4,000 Mac laptop, or you can buy like $1,000 Windows computer, not Windows, but just something with NVIDIA graphics card or something like that, and you can run a 70 billion parameter model. So a 70 billion parameter model is like it's if I was to compare it, it's still smaller than like a Claude Sonnet. It's not the same as Claude Sonnet, but it is still like a very capable model. And some of the like 70 billion parameter models that have been coming out of China are starting to push towards like the capabilities of something like Sonnet. So what that means is today, right now, as a individual person, if you had a decent computer, you could already run a very capable AI model. And the only thing that it would cost you to run this model is the electricity that your computer is using. So, you can end up saving a lot of money if you were going to have to pay token costs to some big company. It would literally just be an investment for your company and very like literally the cost of electricity to run an open source model. All right, so that's our future. We're not that far off, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a good, like, I don't know. I don't really know that much about Open Club, but I think like your take on like how people should use it is like very interesting. So it's a good perspective of that. But yeah, I think I like this conversation today about Open Club. Abdul, you have any other questions you want to ask about, like I think I learned a good amount because I don't really know that much about Open Club, so I think it's good.
Yeah, that's all good.
Yeah.
I mean, I only know so much. Yeah, go ahead, Abdul.
Yeah, just clarifying, not OpenClaw. OpenClaw was like the productivity
Yeah,
software that was
open weight, like open weight.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of open.
There's a lot of open stuff.
Yeah.
I will say though, it is funny that people were talking a lot about OpenClaw and now it's nowhere to be found. There's a lot of hype trains that go up and down. Like,
and yeah, we're going to see many more of these, right? That's just like the latest AI thing, but there's going to be an endless number of latest AI releases. It just, we're getting started. This is not anywhere near the eclipse.
But yeah, no, I also learned a lot, Suresh. I loved hearing your opinions on this and how the individual man can take advantage of this. If you have anything else, any other final points you'd want to make, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had a question for you both. The question is just based off of your lives and where you are now, what do you feel is meaningful to spend your time on in a world of AI? Like, where do you find meaning or purpose? Yeah.
I mean, like, I would say for like meaning, like what I do, I feel like just being efficient, like doing things more efficiently. I feel like using like AI and like, like these different types of models to like streamline your process and like not waste time. I feel like that's the most important thing, to like do things more efficiently. Like whatever it is you do, like my thing is just being more efficient, not wasting time. But like I have to think about like things that I would like, what do I find for meaning?
Yeah, I know it's like a strange question, but it gets at what I was saying earlier. Is like I think motivation and purpose is what really enables AI. So that's why I like that. I'm trying to figure out the right way to propose this question. It's like, what motivates you, or like, what do you find purpose out of now?
Yeah. For me, I would say that the most meaningful stuff I've done with AI is when I have a vision. I have something I want to do, and I have it either in my mind, on paper, in a Google document. Like, I've thought this out, and I forced myself to fully flesh something out before prompting. And then when I go and prompt and I see my vision or what I was thinking or my disorganized thoughts become cohesive, that's where I find the most meaning. And that's where I oftentimes find my most valuable work, where I've found that the experience, my like pet peeve or like my worst experience with AI is the back and forth debugging and like constant back and forth. Like it gets to the point where the chat history is so long, it's just hallucinating, and it's like you have to quit. So I found that like approaching it more methodically is where I find more purpose or motivation. It's kind of it's a nuanced question.
I wanted to add on, like I thought like if you like make a full fleshed out plan, like feels good like after when you like enter into like the AI and like it actually gives you like a good plan of like if I'll just say you have like some plan and you need to like I don't know, have it more organized or something like that. I don't know, but it feels good when like AI actually does it right for you and then you don't have to keep debugging it.
Yeah. No, I think I get where you're going. It's actually like a reflection of you having your thoughts together, because when your thoughts are together, then it produces a nice result.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. That's a pretty like satisfying result when it comes out.
But yeah, that's everything that me and Ashith have today. We had a good conversation about open weight models. We pivoted into how the individual can use them and where it's going to go in the future. So yeah, thank you for hopping on today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, all right.